we're going to switch over to jobs. We're going to talk about jobs now. This is an article by a guy named Harrison Barnes, and he says 7 reasons people never have the successful careers they are capable of. So with so many of us out there, well, not me, but so many people out there looking for work right now, or people who are perhaps, as we know, there's a vast number of people who are either underemployed as well as unemployed. And the underemployed are either underemployed because they're part-time, they're getting paid very little, they're not getting the wages they're looking for, or they're not in the job that they really want. And so they're going to be still looking for jobs. And this is how they go about getting those jobs. He says, if you want to really have the right career, you need to not be complacent, which sounds, very obvious. But a lot of people get into a rut and they do get complacent. I've been there before. He also says, you do not want to rely too much on the opinions of others. Take risks. And I have to agree with that. I've been told before, oh, don't take that job. It's so dangerous. It's a risk. And sometimes it's been right, but more often they've been wrong, because you have to follow your own instincts. You got to know who you are and how you will fit in that company. And you need to make that decision. Don't so much rely on others. Even, although I hate to say it, don't even always rely on your spouse. Of course, take what they have to say into account, but you know yourself better, and you know how you perform in the office better than anybody else does, especially your spouse, unless your spouse has been your boss in the past or has worked hand in hand with you, which is another lecture for another time, because you should not have inter-office romances. I very much recommend against it. And it also says here that if you want the right career, you need to not allow difficulties to turn into ruin. And this is an excellent point. And he gives a classic example that I'm going to share. He says, I know of some attorneys who have been fired more than 5 times, yet they are still having incredible legal careers. But I know of other attorneys who were fired once and were so upset by this that they got into drugs and started having so many problems in their lives and careers that they never recovered. And I have seen that too. And it's absolutely correct. If you allow yourself to become a failure, it's only your own fault. And yet a lot of people do that.
It's all about positive perception. And It's definitely easy to get down.
Making positive choices even when you don't feel
But yeah, the
positive.
risk is worth it. This is not the same. You end up, 1, you can make more money. You switch jobs, you make more money. And 2, if you're happier at doing something, then take the leap.
Right.
You're going to be doing it so much of your life. Why not? If you don't enjoy something, do it. Go ahead and make the switch. And
right.
I think most people are going to be supportive. If most people are going to be supportive. I know that my father did not take as many risks as he wanted to, but he. But
he had a family to support, and so he had to balance that out. Yeah, and of course there is that balance too. But I
don't think there's much. We're not talking about too much retirement. We're not talking about too many things that you actually need to hold on for. The majority of jobs out there, you're gonna be facing getting fired or getting let go or quitting a lot more often. And a lawyer. I think they got good job security. Is probably what they've got
Lawyers?
a sense.
Oh no, my dear, no. One of my best friends is an attorney, and she is brilliant. She really is. She's strong. She's stable, but job security is not something a lawyer usually has. Believe it or not, it's a scary profession. I never had any idea.
No, I didn't.
I always.
I mean, I've seen plenty of successful lawyers. I guess I'm just looking at the people that I'm like, wow, you seem to have it easy. You seem to be doing very well.
They put in a lot of hours and claw their way to the top. Sometimes it's a rough business. But it goes back, I think, this whole issue of not allowing difficulties to turn into ruin goes right back to a positive attitude. And there was a study some years ago that said that even if you feel down, if you feel unhappy, if you smile, if you pretend to be positive, if you act like if you're upbeat, eventually you will be upbeat. You will find that you grow more positive, and the negativity goes away simply because it's impossible for your mind to really wrap itself around being negative and yet at the same time behaving positive, and you will naturally adjust to the more positive behavior as time goes by. But it's a learned behavior, and you have to force yourself to be that positive person even when you don't feel like it. And that's not always easy, but I have found that it makes a huge difference with me, and I think it will with other people too if they practice it. But it's practice. It's not always easy. And following that, it says here, people who do not reach their full potential associate negative things with being successful. Now, that's interesting because I didn't think people did this, but because I just don't necessarily do that. I always think, but you'll hear people who say, oh, I don't want too much money, I'll be like that guy, or I don't want to be that successful, my friends won't recognize me, I won't fit in, my family's a bunch of blue-collar workers, how will they feel if I'm successful and heading up a international company? I can see how that happens, although I would hope it's rare, but it's one of those things where sometimes people feel odd about being successful perhaps when their parents weren't. Now I've always said a good parent wants their child to be more successful than they were with each generation, but of course that's not always going to be the case. And the last thing that he says here, oh no, I'm sorry, there's a couple other things, but he says you have to make success a firm must. You got to make up your mind, I'm going to make it. And he says, of course, that you have to develop a strategy that works. You need to focus on your goals. Oh man, do I hate goals. I hate it.
You see a lot of those wishing boards. I automatically think of this. I like the positive aspect, but I think that pushing past that, it's overblown. I think I definitely have done things where I repeat things to myself and my achievements, and it does work. I just definitely take it and realize that it's work. It's not a trick, and they're talking about going in life and pushing a positive perspective, and you're not faking it. You're hoping that you can see the light of everything, because you can go negative, you can look down at the ground and you will see more, or you can look up in the sky and you're going to be more positive. So there's aspects of you can definitely change how fun your day is and make better choices as they're getting them, because you're trying to get on the right foot. You're saying, okay, let's be positive and get on the right foot.
Yeah, but that's not it. Yes, you're right, but that's not what they're saying here. They're saying you have to create goals. You have to sit down and create goals. And I am not a paper person. I'm not the kind of person that can sit down and say, okay, in 1 year I want to be here. In 5 years I'm going to be here. I just always would double talk it. Oh, well, I might be here, but then what if I did this, or what if I tried that? But you got to get past that, and you got to sit down and at least flesh out your goals a little bit. You can always go back and revise it, but you need to get some things on paper. You need to get focused, and you need to move toward those goals, revising them as you need to. It's similar almost to a relationship. Dr. Paul, who will be on at 9 o'clock, Dr. Paul talks about how you need to be able to write up goals, write up what you're looking for in a spouse. And it's similar to that with your business experiences too. You have to write up your goals, what you're looking for with yourself, where you're going. And keep that list nearby. Put it up on a bulletin board. Put it on your refrigerator, so every time you go for a glass of milk, you see what your goals are and where you need to be focused. I think that's key.
I usually change my goals, which is, I guess that's the problem, is I always look at, and I'm looking at the things I want to do with my life, not in my career path so much, but with the other accomplishments that I want. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if it could apply to me, it would be definitely get them on paper, because they change every month. So you're always wanting to do something else that month, mm-hmm. and you're not going to get anything accomplished without setting it forth. At least most things you can't do in a month. Most things definitely take a year to accomplish.
You're right. And for that, you need to do short-term and long-term goals. You could either have two papers, or you could put it down on a piece of paper where you have the short-term goals in the top half and the long-term on the bottom half. The long-term might not change as often. For instance, somebody going to college, their long-term goal might be to be an electrical engineer. And their short-term goal is to get an apartment, move out of the house from mom and dad, get a part-time job at Pizza Hut. But that's certainly not the long-term goal. Once they achieve those goals, those short-term goals will change again. And so I think it's important to keep your goals updated. And I don't think there's anything wrong with changing them every month. And I think that was one of the things that held me back years ago, when I used to really resist sitting down and writing up goals, is I wanted perfection, and I wanted to have them set in stone, and I didn't want to obligate myself to myself or to anybody else, because I didn't know what I wanted. But sometimes, even if you don't know what you wanted, put down what you desire and use that as a goal and see where you're going to go with it. But I think goals are very important in informing what we are and where we're going. So I would recommend goal setting. And speaking of goals, of course, with people who are still looking for jobs, your goal, I'm sure, is to get a job at the top of the list. One thing that they talk about is the economics behind the jobs right now and how many people are looking for jobs. You are definitely going to want to set yourself apart from the others. And so, of course, having good goals, being focused, getting your resume in order.
I think I always do well in interviews, and the specialization is good. I think those are two aspects that, like we talked about, specialization being in there. And one of the things that I think your overall resume should be short and sweet. It doesn't. I've tried resumes where I give them the whole backstory of myself. I think that's a good thing for a cover letter. Good to target the employee. Good to say,
right.
Here the employer, and say, here's why I'm a good fit. Here's why I'll be contributing to your team. And then obviously the resume, it's all about the key words we talked about that you actually put in there.
Right.
That's definitely huge. And if somebody can skim it, because they have too many pour in with this many job applicants, there's too many to look through anyway. So how do you make it stand out?
Well, that's a good point, and there's a lot of debate about resumes, especially right now. But one thing that I think everybody needs to do is get it online. Everybody needs to, and Indeed.com actually has a free service where you can put your resume online for everybody to see. I do recommend Indeed.com for a resume online.